Hello, good morning, everybody. This is Ana Maria Rat. I'm director and founder of ProImagina, and I'm a member of the evaluation committee for mapping good practices in the Americas digital education organized by the Alliance of OES and Profuturo within the framework of the Americas Educational Portal of the OAS. We welcome you cordially to this first webinar. In the series we have called Digital Education in the Americas, Best Practices to Inspire. In this edition, we will focus on fostering learning to learn activities, a very big topic, very important in all of Latin America after the pandemics. Before starting, we want to tell you that this is a Spanish transmission, but we have simultaneous interpreting into English. It's available in the Zoom functions. For our English-speaking community, we would like to inform you. Para la comunidad anglohablante, quiero informarles que la presentación tiene interpretación en inglés, está en la configuración de Zoom. This webinar, as I said, is the first of several events at this marvelous alliance between OAS and Profuturo. It is organized within the framework of mapping of best practices in digital education in the Americas to learn about other activities. This is the first one. And so if you want to get more information, follow the social media of OAS Red Pro Futuro or and the dynamics of this event is structured in two moments. The first one is an institutional welcome and the summary of the first of the main results of this mapping. At a second point, we will start a round table with teachers and professors in some of the experiences focused on learning to learn activities. I will welcome the OAS and Profuturo representatives who will welcome you officially to this event. First of all, I'd like to invite the Director of Human Development, Education and Employment Department of OAS, Jesus Chucri Yacoman. He will address you briefly. Jesus, please turn on your mic. Thank you very much, Ana Maria. It's a pleasure to be with you. Good morning to most of those who are in the Americas, and good afternoon who are with us from other places in our world, particularly Europe, where we have our partner and great ally, Profuturo. I'm very pleased to introduce these webinars, Digital Education in the Americas, Best Practices for Inspiration. From our department at OAS, we are very proud of presenting this activity within the framework of mapping good practices in digital education in the Americas. The road that took us here has been very gratifying because we have been able to know more than 160 innovative projects that include the use of new technologies in educational practices, in local educational practices in 17 member states in the OAS. In April, last April, we launched the map of good practices or best practices in digital education. Visit it in the OAS portal so you can get to know all these experiences in depth. This is a great map for institutions, governments, and teachers, and that will contribute to the Americas agenda as approved by the ministries of education in November last year. Our challenges in education are large, and they have to be attended to by everybody in a coordinated way. I hope we can continue innovating on what has been built in other latitudes and with intersectoral collaboration. Our contribution here is to make them visible and share them with all of you through these dialogue spaces in which teachers with us will seek to inspire all the educational community in the region. Our thanks to all the teachers who have participated in the mapping, its initiatives, and all those who are with us from the different places in the hemisphere today. I'd also like to take advantage of this forum to acknowledge the commitment of Profuturo with education in the Americas. In its alliance with OAS, we have been able to develop a number of activities to strengthen educational public policies in the different member countries. I would like to greet Magdalena Brier and the person responsible for global alliances and institutional relations, and a great ally to us, Leticia Rapp, who is with us today. Thank you very much to the Ministries of Education and the Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Permanent Missions of member states at OAS for their support. We develop all these activities and work for all these countries. And finally, the teachers who partake in the RIED OAS, as well as the Profuturo and Movistar organizations who have worked to be able to meet at this event. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Ana Maria, I pass the floor to you again. Well, thank you very much to you, Jesus, for your welcome remarks, very inspirational. Now, I'd like to pass the floor to a person responsible for global alliances, Leticia del Rato. Please join us, Leticia. Thank you very much, Ana Maria. Thank you, Jesus, also for your remarks. Good afternoon, everybody from Spain, and good morning to all those who are on the other side of the ocean. We celebrate a very special event today, first of all, because hand in hand with our partners, the Organization of American States, the OAS, with whom we have been working since 2018 in this very important alliance to promote digital transformation of education all over Latin America and the Caribbean, and with whom we have created and developed this best practices report. Thank you very much for your commitment and for being with us in this very necessary mission. This event is also an acknowledgement of the tireless work teachers carry out, and schools and civil society organizations towards better education at such an important time as this one. This webinar will go in depth in acknowledgement of some best practices in the work that Profuturo and OAS have been doing in 2022, and also experiences in fostering skills to learn. The initiatives we're going to know today offer opportunities to be replicated and scaled up, and they are an example in the design of public policies aimed at favoring educational improvement, integrating technology. We share this and we support it. Profuturo is a digital education program. It was created in 2016 by Fundación Telefónica and Fundación La Caixa to improve educational quality in the world through digital education. To end, I would like to greet all the teachers with us today and thank them for their commitment, enthusiasm, and collaborative work that is so necessary to collaborate and transform education. You're the example that educational change is possible, and it should come from teachers. All the initiatives we're going to get to know are led by teachers who, from very complex realities, have proposed innovations against or to face the challenges in their environment. We will continue working to contribute in education in the world in vulnerable surroundings and improving educational quality. Thank you very much, Anna. I pass the floor to you again. Very well. Thank you, Leticia, for your remarks, your enthusiasm, and for being part of this alliance between OAS and Profuturo that is so important for the region. Now, we'd like to invite you to a brief video that shows the main results of this mapping. And it also presents the interactive mapping of best practices in the Americas. This mapping and this map are in the educational portal of the Americas. The link and the QR can be found here at the bottom of the screen, and you can see more than 100 experiences that you can navigate in both English and Spanish. Undoubtedly, a huge example of what our region can share with the world in terms of innovative capacity. We'll take a look at the video now. Digital education best practice mapping is led by OAS and Profuturo. It aims at showing educational institution initiatives in Latin America and the Caribbean. We called for initiatives developed between 2022 and 2022 that promoted learning activities and generated a positive impact in the educational community through innovative projects, pointing at following up school paths and recovering learning, including integration of new digital technologies. We received more than 160 requests from 17 countries in the world. We have created an interactive map in the educational portal of the Americas as a repository where you can add more and get to know more about each one of them. Our project is called Disruptive Education for a Nation. We started this project to provide a different education. An evaluation committee had the difficult task of selecting 30 remarkable experiences as good educational practice. Also, 4 of them had the chance of inviting a teacher to attend to the 5th edition of the Enlightened event between 16 and 17 November 2022 in Madrid. This was a space to share experiences and reflect about challenges in learning and education in digital times. With my participation in 2022 Enlightened, I enriched my pedagogical practice. I learned from many teachers in the world, and the project I developed with my students. Enlightened has meant development, learning, knowledge from experts, and this leads me to take all this to my practice and make up a community of innovative teachers, getting into good practices, get into best practices, and the link you see in this video to get to know the most recent and innovative practices in the region. Thank you very much for your support. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video as we have, and that you were able to, sorry? Well, we start the second moment of this event after you saw this video. I hope you enjoyed it as well as we did. And I hope you get into the portal in the best practice map. It's totally available in English and Spanish. Now, we will start the second moment in our webinar to talk with teachers from the region around a table with teachers who participated with their practices, particularly on learning to learn. And these were outstanding practices. This forum includes some questions that teachers will answer to. I'd like to welcome them, thanking them for being here. Víctor Hernández from Guatemala with his project Disruptive Education for a Nation. Well, he participated in this mapping. The same goes for Carlos Alberto Pino from Peru. He has a very interesting project called Q-antu, open classroom, and María Gabriela Linardo from Argentina with a project Educational Space Atalaya Sur. These are three projects, three initiatives that are very interesting, and they point at developing learning to learn activities. Therefore, I'd like to do the following thing. Perhaps all of this is a novelty for you, so I'd like to invite each one of our teachers to briefly introduce us about what their practice was. Perhaps we can start with Victor from Guatemala. He can briefly comment what this practice of disruptive education for a nation was all about. Hello, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Ana, Carlos, it's a pleasure to see all the teachers and principals and friends who see us from different countries. It's a pleasure and an honor to share best practices. This is Víctor Hernández from Guatemala, from the SETI project, Disruptive Education for a Nation. We were glad to participate in former roundtables. In 2022, we took our good practice. This best practice aims at having people study what they like. For example, technology, technical jobs, also scholarly education. Guatemala is a small country in Central America. It has 20 million inhabitants. As you know, all projects are born from need, and education is a fundamental pillar to be able to improve societies. Our best practice is scalable. It can be replicable. Guatemala has many rural areas, so we focus in providing quality education with high standards where students can learn digital competencies, also soft skills, and good best practices for their lives. We focus on what students want to study. Oftentimes, we consider that students consider education as an obligation. We think it's actually fun. And this is something that is being done in other countries, and we're trying to do likewise in Guatemala. Thank you very much, Victor. I'd now like to invite María Gabriela Linardo. Tell us what your project is all about, briefly. Espacio Educativo Atalaya Sur, that's the name. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity of being able to share our educational practice. It is framed in the reflection on learning to learn activities. Our practice is part of the tasks we have in Red Atalaya Sur. This is an internet community network in La Isla 20, which is the area where we work. It is in the southern south of Buenos Aires. It's a place that is crisscrossed by extreme vulnerability and poverty situations. Like they lack potable water, there are difficulties to access health and education. In this context, our educational purpose is to carry out practices that build cognitive practices that will allow boys and girls to get to know whatever they want to know and whatever they want to learn. Since the pandemic, we started a number of workshops to incentivize, accompany their different paths, so they could be players of our digital society. We thought that technologies could make different disciplines more effective and efficient, like art disciplines or science disciplines. We reviewed a number of cultural objects and we linked them to technological resources to see how they could be leveraged. We developed technological education workshops focused in teaching that would promote technological vocations for children from 10 to 16 years of age. We worked on digital literacy, social media, content production, robotics, artificial intelligence, and these educational instances are unique in the place where we work. This is teaching that if it did not exist, it would be very difficult for these children to approach technological knowledge. So we decided to join desire of learning with collective spaces, exploration, autonomy, and digital education for each one of the participants as from their interests. Great. Thank you very much.
Super, muchas gracias.
María Gabriela.
María Gabriela.
I'd now like to pass the floor to Carlos Alberto from Peru. So he briefly tells us what the project Q-antu Open Classroom is. Good morning. Thank you very much. From Peru, I'd like to thank OAS and Profuturo for this opportunity. The name is Q-antu, Open Classroom. This project was born during the pandemic. This experience comes from the Peruvian Andes, the Cusco region. We had difficulties of connectivity with our students. We had low technological resources in our schools. And Q-antu Open Classroom was born then. 23 rural educational institutions participated. 156 teachers were organized in working groups. And we decided to start with Q-antu through 4 coordination strategies. First of all, start with learning projects. They empowered students. They made work theirs because it started from their own interests and they could mobilize a number of skills. Also, teachers were organized in work cycles with a set of learning experiences that had to be presented in 2 formats. One, in text, so that learning experience could become a guide for self-learning, and in audio, so that they could come out through local radio stations in our working areas, so we could reach all the villages where students live, because they could not move because of the lockdown we had due to the pandemic. Then a third aspect is a change of mindset. It was called Q-antu because each teacher had to assume the role of a personal tutor, not only taking a look at learning experiences, but also going beyond emotions, feelings, and an integral look to our students. And the 4th project was to provide families with tablets with information content. They didn't have internet, but there were contents in those tablets. So according to the project need and the inquiry for information, they could access to that information and mobilize all their experience to develop learning projects and reach final products. And that's the experience of Q-antu Open Classroom in Peru. Thank you very much, Carlos.
Muchas gracias, Carlos. Entonces,
Just to
también,
mention that the
solo
experience
mencionar
is
que
Q-antu,
también
right?
se
That's how
canta,
you
así
say
se
it.
dice, ¿cierto?
Q-antu is a Quechua
Bien,
term, yes.
Muy bien.
Yes, this first
primera
round
ronda nos
makes
deja
it very
claro
clear
que
that the three
las tres
initiatives
iniciativas tienen un
want to
foco
put students
fundamental
in
que
the
tiene que ver con los
center,
estudiantes en
right?
el centro.
They are
Víctor nos hablaba de las
student-centered.
maneras de cómo,
Victor talked about how to motivate
motivarlos
students
y hacer que los
to make them really want to learn. Maria told us that they provided them tools so they were the actors of their own education, and Carlos also to put these experiences available to students, which I consider is very interesting when we take a look at these experiences, practices, and projects in a more transversal way. One of the questions we'd like to ask is, how was the process to design an educational practice specifically focused on learning to learn activities? Because we have macro projects, integral projects, they have different action areas, but once you design an educational practice, what was the process there? And what skills were you able to develop in students? And also, perhaps, start with Victor again. Victor, tell us specifically about this design experience focused on these skills. Thank you very much, Hannah. I think all projects have to be born from needs. Hopper said that in changed times, those who are open to learning will be owners of the future. Those who think they know everything will be equipped for a world that won't exist anymore. During the pandemic, there were many changes, as we know, and these changes should already have existed in the world. But unfortunately, we have third world countries and underdeveloped countries. Guatemala is a beautiful country. I'm very glad to represent it and talk about my country, but there is inequality in many contexts, lack of equity. Unfortunately, those who have more economic resources in Guatemala are the ones who have the best education. And this means inequality goes on. How was this project designed? I'm part of a system in which progressing is difficult. Our empathy led to develop a project in which the main ingredient is motivation. If you're not, if students are not motivated, and if teachers do not innovate, it's not easy to progress. Economic resources, poverty is the main limiting factor. But this project breaks those paradigms. Proyecto SETI, Disruptive Education for a Nation, breaks social status. The people who are with us, more than 300 people, are people who can study short courses, specialties like programming, technology, ICTs, also occupational studies. People need to generate revenues to be able to study, and that's what we focus in. They have to learn for life. And many people can't learn because of limiting factors, so we decided to design a different educational model. We have 17 specialties in face-to-face, remote, and hybrid. We use digital tools and technology, but we mainly work with parents, teachers, and students. They are all fundamental pillars. I consider we are making the changes we wanted to make, and this can be replicated both domestically and internationally. I think Latin American countries have many coincidences. Excellent, Victor. Thank you very much.
Excelente, Víctor, muchas gracias.
Perhaps Maria can tell us a little bit.
María, si nos
How
puede
was
contar,
the process
cómo
of
fue el
designing
proceso de diseñar una práctica
practice
focal en estas
focused in
habilidades en el
these
marco
skills
del
in
proyecto
Atalaya
que
Sur?
tiene Atalaya Sur
Because you have
Educational
several
Space,
components in
tiene
the project.
varios componentes, pero ya
Now, thinking
pensando
about the
en estas
specific
habilidades nos
skill of
gustaría
learning to
aprender y
learn,
entender
how did you reach
cómo
this
llegaron
idea,
a esta
and how
idea
was the
y cómo fue el
process of
proceso de
designing
diseñar
an
una práctica
experience
o una
focused on that?
experiencia con ese foco?
Yes, as you can imagine, uh, teachers have many difficulties and vulnerable contexts. There are many problems that come up in these situations during our students' learning. When we talk about skills of learning to learn, we refer to executive notions and metacognition exercises, and those aren't an easy task. We require high cognitive level to undertake those functions. So designing teaching situations that promote learning around those skills has this challenge. We have to go look for each cognitive style of each participant in our workshop. But these are skills that are quite complex. Therefore, it's a high purpose and within the context of our current knowledge, and particularly in social exclusion situations, there is nothing more important than teaching them about their own cognitive styles, their own approach of subjects, to recognize their symbolic nature, to empower as epistemic subjects, no matter if they can have many barriers. But they can achieve to build the tools that will empower them to deal with any kind of content or knowledge. At the beginning, we started virtually. It was very complex to reach the people through screens. It's a dialogue link, as you know. From that point in time, we decided to take as a premise the fact that we had to pay attention to the participants' interests, what they liked, what they were intrigued by, what were the problems they were concerned about. No teaching proposal should go outside the situation. It should always be anchored in their situation. We always thought about their cognitive and affective realities of participants, because if we think teaching outside this, we won't achieve any change. So we were very much interested, just we could give a metacognitive leap in a vulnerability condition to reach the status of a subject who can know technological and scientific matters. Thank you very much, Maria. Gabriela, you have given us very clear examples of the challenges I think we regionally have. We need to think if we solve basic skills to tackle with more difficult tasks, and clearly your experience turns that upside down. There is no contradiction in dealing with more complex things because the strategy is empowering the person and develop their what they already bring. This very much coincides with what Victor talked about: motivation, interest, and will of developing these skills to be learning all along your life, always focused in our students, both girls and youth. Now we'd like to listen to Carlos Alberto's specific experience in Peru in an area that is rural, right? Can you tell us how was this process of designing an educational practice focused in these learning to learn skills? Yes, thank you.
Bien, gracias. Bueno,
We, before the pandemic, we thought that we could work with a methodology of learning projects. Why? Projects allow you to ask students about their interests, needs, and demands, right? And that approaches them to their reality and the problems affecting them. That's a great opportunity to generate an intrinsic motivation in them. As for the project, what we did was to ask them what they were interested in. This allowed us to carry out a number of activities that were no longer focused in contents. They would go look for contents according to their needs and demands. That develops abilities or skills like inquiry or gathering data, both written and oral. And all this variety allows students to mobilize. And that also leads them to account on what they are learning through tangible evidence, like notebooks in which they write their compendiums or models or oral presentations of the work they had done. It allows them to communicate with other people with different ages and different knowledge. That has been the richness in Q-antu. Now, the fundamental role of teachers has been great there because we also need to change our mindset. We prepared self-learning notebooks that guided the project. Those notebooks did not have specific contents. They took students through a path to look for their needs and then systematize the information they needed to get. We also complemented this with work in the radio station. Students could also call the radio stations to tell them about everything they had learned. That also allows them to develop higher language skills. This is what Q-antu has contributed in terms of skills developed in their capacity of learning to learn. Excellent, Carlos. Thank you very much, because you're also showing us how learning based on projects is effectively a methodology that can be applied and is replicable in different contexts. And perhaps we should think about that. Many of the people who are watching us or who will access these practices may wonder, how do I do this in my context? Mine is urban and not rural, or I'm rural and that's urban, or I have more or less technology. So there's this question: what are the elements in your project that can be applied in different contexts? It's true that replicating innovative projects and initiatives at 100% is not possible, but there are components there's learning,
Aprendizajes,
there
hay
are
ciertos
key
elementos
elements
que son
that
claves y que a
can
su
be
vez
scaled up
tienen el potencial de
and
cambiar.
replicated. I'd like to
Me
start by
gustaría partir
Victor.
con
He has
Víctor,
permanently
porque
said that his
permanentemente nos ha
project
dicho que su
is thought
proyecto
for a nation.
efectivamente está pensado para una
It
nación, o
has
sea, no
a
tiene tanta
large
ambición
ambition for all of
para todo
Guatemala.
Guatemala
And
y
if you
si
think
no lo
it
piensan así
bigger,
grande,
you
lo pueden
can
pensar
think
también de manera
it
regional. O sea,
regionally.
preguntarte,
So,
Víctor,
Victor, what are
¿cuáles son
the
esos elementos que tú
elements in
ves
your
en el
disruptive
proyecto
education
de
project
iniciativa
for
para
a
una
nation
nación
that are
que son
critical
cruciales y que
and
me
that you
gustaría
would like to
compartir
share
para otros
with
maestros,
other
profesores,
teachers
profesoras
listening to
que
us
nos están
today?
escuchando hoy día?
Thank you, Anna. I'd like to briefly comment that this project started without resources. We started with a couple of plastic chairs and an old blackboard. Today, we are growing. Now, how was this possible? Well, first of all, God helped us. And secondly, we made lots of efforts. And I consider we can achieve things if they are well planned and they have a feasible projection. All of our services and our project is guaranteed by the Ministry of Education. There are guidelines that lead all guarantees and processes in ministries of education, right? But we started very small with a technological center. Then we grew and opened a technical training center. And now we have a scholarly education center. It started small, but how can we reach the nation? That's the question. Since 2020, we have tried to reach different areas of our country, and we started to work with books, printed material. In Guatemala, most of the population has no access to computers or the internet. So we created modules for different academic levels. If someone wants to study from primary school to diversified education, they can do so, no matter if they have economic resources or access to multimedia equipment. As I said, those who have more resources will physically go to an educational establishment. Those who cannot go to educational establishments will have to get education in this way. And we have not much internet. We have a dream, we make efforts, we empower teachers, we have a work team with a vision towards significant changes. And I think if we have that, we can replicate that in our country, in many countries in Latin America. Great, Victor.
Súper, muchas gracias,
Maybe
Víctor.
we
Y
can,
quizás ahora podríamos
well, Maria Gabriela,
tú nos adelantaste,
you
María Gabriela,
said
en las conversaciones
in
anteriores,
former
pero
conversations a few things about
para ti,
this, but
¿cuáles serían
what
todos
are
esos
these
elementos
elements
que hacen
that
crucial que esa práctica se
um,
pueda
help us
compartir y se pueda
share
aplicar
and apply
en otros ambientes?
your practices elsewhere? As Victor said, you have to persist, you have to insist. You start small and humble and reach higher levels. I liked your vision, Victor. Now, if we think about a more didactic thing that is fundamental for us in the project is, well, to get to know the cognitive and territorial realities of our participants and not bring them things that they're not interested in. We can propose attractive actions in an interesting educational present to build a better future for each participant. We know that the more diverse approaches to content, the better the learning will be. So it's also very important to face teaching situations in different ways of accessing to knowledge. For example, groups that bring interaction. Interaction allows us to have much more complex thinking processes. And that's what we want to build with the kids, skills and not specific contents. Those skills are built with others in problem situations in which they are interested. Finally, it is fundamental to be aware about the fact that building these contents and metacognitive or technological contents and metacognitive skills allow us social inclusion. We must never forget where we are teaching and what for. So this is a tool of a cognitive transformation. And so this can remediate the context they live in to a certain extent. If we want to achieve this, coordination of all society sectors is necessary. The private sector, the public sector, different civil society organizations are necessary so that we can have strong links and so that the projects can be replicated. Thank you very much for your interesting reflection. Innovate to include. Inclusion as a foundation for new disruptive models. And afterwards, we will think a little bit more about what you said to expand these experiences. Carlos Alberto, you started to say in your former answer what elements like changing the teacher's mindset, right? What are the parts of your project or initiative that can be applied in different places beyond Peru and beyond the rural area where you are inserted? Thank you. One of the things I would highlight is having the capacity of working in a network. As I said at the beginning, Q-antu was executed in educational institutions that belong to a rural area in Peru. What this country was able to do was to organize these teachers in work cycles. They were all communicated. What's good now is that the internet has improved. And now we can have meetings like the ones we are having, and we can work in this way. We don't need to be physically together. You know, we have a rugged geography and transportation is difficult, and it's also more expensive to go from one place to another. So what we have seen through digital platforms is the possibility of approaching teacher groups, which are organized in a collegiate way. They prepare the self-learning notebooks. They work together in working audio spots in the radio. They are prepared by 5 or 6 teachers who then edit it. And this is collegiate work, collaborative work, and lots of communication. That's the first element. Secondly, the methodology has opened the school to the community. It is no longer a school that is closed inside its perimeter. It goes to the community because there are needs, demands, and problems. This empowers students, and projects are the students, because in this way they feel they are an important part of the solution to those problems. It's also important to systematize experiences. That's the only way in which I can be in front of you here. I'm representing all my colleagues. We were acknowledged by the Ministry of Education, and this allowed us to participate in the Education Commission at the Congress of the Republic to talk about educational networks. So it opens opportunities. We have to learn to systematize our experiences, gathering them and learning to define them. In this way, these experiences can be replicated. That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carlos. These are very interesting conversations, but we are almost running out of time. Before reaching our last reflections, I'd like to mention a few things we have heard with these questions. How to focus innovation, what makes innovation effective in some contexts, what is the transformation paradigm behind. These have been three fabulous experiences. You have all shown us that innovation is diverse. It has different dynamics. It attends to context. None of these innovations can be detached from their context, territorial, cultural, time, as is the case of a pandemic. And resources have never been abundant. And this has not been a barrier to generate those necessary changes and innovations. So there is view that goes beyond the need for resources. It's fundamental to have this fabulous triad, the relationship teacher, student, and community, because this shows us that innovation seeks this relationship in link. So teachers, students, and reality in terms of content, technology, curriculum, whatever, leads to changes. We have all seen the importance of having multiple strategies so they can be flexible and adaptable. These are not rigid innovations. These are not hyper-structured projects. The biggest value is in having clarity about the pedagogical objectives, what we want to change, what we want to achieve. We create strategies around that and not vice versa. And that's a fundamental piece of learning in a moment in which we are changing so much because of the post-pandemic and because of technology. These changes lead us to center in the pedagogical objective we want to mobilize and to think about innovations as from there. Finally, I think we have had many activities here that have shown us that we can learn to learn and learn in network, as Carlos said. Systematization is also important. Collective knowledge is important. And I see that there is collective knowledge that is very fruitful and very alive in our region, and that we are making it available through this interactive As I said, time is not always enough. But perhaps now let's start by Carlos. Now, Carlos, can you share a final thought about the impact this practice has had, this project has had in your territory, and inspirational message as well? Well, thank you. Something we have learned is that we can do things when we work collectively in a team with organized teachers. We should not become distracted concerning the many needs and many problems we can have in our profession, or I think we should better see what potential we have in ourselves and in our territories also. And this is very important too. We have to work in coordination with parents. It's a fundamental work because they are the cornerstone in implementing such projects. Despite their lacks, they have been able to organize a space for student study. And this changes the mindset of families too, because education becomes something important for their families. They can see that what they learn is tangible, and also they can tell their families all the process they are generating in their educational activities. Another teaching is that our system is still too fragile in terms of what it offers, technology and information, particularly in rural areas. That does not mean that we should be stopped because of that. No matter how small resources we have, the internet or the digital platforms, we can do collective work. That is the third element. The following thing, the inspiring phrase would be, let's go on trusting in what we do. Boys and girls need to have better opportunities than we have had. In rural areas, that is more evident, and we need to be more engaged. That's our inspiration for rural teachers, not only in Peru, all over the world. Thank you, Carlos. Maybe Maria Gabriela, some final remarks and an inspirational message? There are two central issues in our workshops and practices, and I have heard Victor and Carlos said something similar, and this is referred to groups, collective work, and not only in terms of the devices we use and of the groups of students, but also in terms of reaching the collectivity and making up a network that will allow for progression of knowledge, and also in relationship to life at large. Only networks and collective work will lead to better situations, generally speaking, not only cognitive. And also the wish to know is a centerpiece in contexts that we go through, like of vulnerability. Knowledge has the last place because there are other urgencies, but we have to be able to leverage their learning, the boys and girls learning, because this is a tool for them to be better and for the entire society to be better. In terms of an inspirational phrase, we need practices that empower us, that organize us, and that allow us to be better. Victor, a few ending remarks.
mensaje así de cierre que quisieras compartir?
Thank you very much for this time. I'd like to congratulate the OAS and Profuturo for providing this space. I think Maria Gabriela, Carlos, and I are very proud of having projects that have stood out. It's difficult to start a project, but when you see the smiles, when you see the changes we can reach in youth lives is priceless. I think that being a teacher can inspire or can destroy students. We have a big responsibility in our hands. I feel that we can achieve a lot. We need to have initiatives for change in our small schools, no matter where they are. Teachers who are watching this, principals who are watching this are already learning. I think we should be humble enough to learn by day and break that traditional education that has been with us for decades. Education exists. What we want is to innovate it, to change the teachers' mindsets, generating employment, bringing young teachers, providing them with the opportunity of learning and having a different pedagogy. If we change the educational foundation, everything will change. God bless you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Muy bien.
Very well. Victor, don't go.
Que no te vayas todavía porque
I would like to ask a question that I have seen in the chat several times. What about that role of teachers that has changed very specifically, very concretely? Can you share what is it you feel that teachers should change? Concretely, given this context and the need for innovation. And then we close the panel. Well, I consider that the main teacher in most, the main change in most teachers is attitude and motivation. Many have academic preparation, but having the initiative for making changes is fundamental. My project wants to leave a trace and infect more people to make changes to improve our future. What about you, Carlos? You have talked about changing the mindset all the time. What do we need to change? I am convinced that we have to work collectively and we have to evaluate our own practices and realize what's contributing and helping to transform elements, methodologies, techniques, strategies that are covering demands and developing deep skills in our students. If there is a collectivity that does not evaluate the work they do, they will make the same mistakes once and again. We have to do that to improve. Very well, Maria Gabriela. The last message about change in teachers, I coincide that that has to do with the position they have and how they reflect about their practices. Reflection has to be cross-cutting and constant, as Carlos said, to acknowledge our strengths and change things that are not building any learning. Well, thank you very much. Time is over. We'd like to thank you once again. All of those in the OAS and Profuturo teams, especially the ministries of education, the ministries of foreign affairs, and permanent missions of OAS members for supporting these activities so that they reach the entire hemisphere. Finally, you're invited once again to get into this interactive map and the publications we make, which are available in English and Spanish through the links you have on the screen in the chat, and follow the social media in the OAS to get to know about all our activities. This is the first of several webinars. Thank you very much, Víctor, Maria Gabriela, and Carlos. Thank you for your participation. Hope to see you soon.